Good afternoon, everyone. It's Louise here from Eleanor Grace. I'm going to show you, for the purposes of the stitch along, my version of the Sham hem stitch, which I'm calling Louise's Sham Herringbone Hem stitch. I don't know what I'm going to call it. It's not a stitch that's used a lot now. I could hardly find anything on it, but it is the most gorgeous stitch. It is here on the Heart Workshop. So if you've got the Heart Workshop purchased from me, then you will have full details of this. I'm going to do a quick run through of how to do this stitch. So normally this is worked on a zigzag stitch. So you would do a zigzag initially. I've made it into a herringbone stitch, which is one of my favourite stitches, and then wrapping the thread around the second colour, which has got to be something which is a contrast to the first one, otherwise it just doesn't work. I don't know if the colours are going to come up very well here, but this is a the base layer of the herringbone stitch is a sort of soft sort of sable camel sort of colour, and the top stitch is like a bright verdigris green. And you wrap, and the one thing to remember is to wrap in the same direction. If you get started and you're going in one, you're going under and over at certain places, replicate that the whole way through, otherwise it does look a bit odd. So I shall try and quickly show you this just very briefly. I've got very little space left on this old pad here, this little practice pad. I've got a video on how to make one of these, very simple but really good to get to know stitches. I'm just going to pull this out a little bit so I don't knock into the video. So I'm going to do a herringbone stitch. Now there's a whole separate video on herringbone stitch, so I do recommend watching that if you're not confident with it. So herringbone stitch looks a little bit like a wigwam basically. So you do one vertical stitch, you do one cross stitch, but when you cross back over, you come behind that top stitch, and then you again cross over, and I usually like to roll until I see that it's the right sort of shape, so it's something like that. But as I say, there's more in the video for herringbone, so you can have a look at that. So I'm just going to make a few of these herringbone stitches, and then, which is also on the beginners and the intermediate workshops that I've got as well, if you're interested. So I'm going to make sort of, I've got to make about at least 4 or 5 or maybe more to show you how the stitch works. So I've made these quite wide. On the other example, which I'll show you in a minute, which I'm making for our current stitch along, then we're going to be doing it a little bit narrower spaced because of the size that we've got available. So if I just do this quickly, remember you're always coming back on yourself, so it looks like a little teepee or a wigwam. Okay, I'm just going to do one more stitch, but I've lost my thread. Here we go. Oh, it's being a bit fiddly today. We've got a terrible storm here, so I am hurrying slightly because it's really bad, and luckily I've got a new camera lighting set up which hopefully makes it slightly better, but it's so dark outside, it's like night time, it's terrible. So there we go, we got 4 stitches, that should do. I'm going to just wrap that off and cut the end, and then I'm going to transfer over to the second colour. So as I say, you want something definitely very you know, you can have coordinated, but it's got to be visible and it's got to be enough of a contrast. Okay, so what you want to remember, if I show you the one I've done here as well, if you can see here, this pink and green around here, I've done the green herringbone stitch quite tightly, and then I've wrapped this thicker pink thread around it. Now that was hard. I'd actually, next time I'd do the thicker one as the bottom layer with the herringbone and the thinner thread over it. I think that would probably be easier, which is what I'm doing here. So what you want to do is to come up to the left of the first stitch, but very close, almost on it if you like, and then you want to start wrapping around the top and the bottom. Now I haven't left myself a lot of wiggle room here because these are quite wide stitches, but what you want to do is ideally not to go through at any point. You don't want to be pressing into the pattern, you just want to be wrapping. So you want to make sure that you go over and under in the same ways. So what I would tend to do is probably come under the first stitch. Okay, I'm not doing this very neatly, but I would come under the first stitch and I would probably go over that stitch there, just having a look to see. And what you want to do is wrap around the top of this, the sort of X at the top of the herringbone stitch. Now it's not always easy to do this. I'm just going to check whether that works. In fact, that doesn't sit very well, so I'm changing my mind, and that's a good thing about practicing. That's why it's worth having a practice pad. It's not keeping the thread in place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go under this one. I think that will be better actually. So I'm going under there, I'm coming round, and then I'm going to go under here. Now what I'm going to make sure I do is that every time I'm going to go under this left hand bar, I'm going to go over the thread that I've just wrapped there, if you like, just to keep it consistent. Now I know I'm left-handed, so this may be confusing for some. As you can see, we've got a nice little wrap there. So I'm going to do the same again, so which means I go under both layers, which is what I ended up doing there. So I go under both layers here. Now you want to keep the thread not too taut. You sort of want to be relaxed, quite relaxed with it. So again, I'm going to go around here. I'm going to go under this green bar, but I'm going to go over the top of the thread that I did before. And that gives you your second piece there. Okay, I'm going to do that a couple more times. So again, I'm going to go under both levels here. That seemed to be better, didn't it? And again, going over the thread that I've just wrapped, but underneath the green bar. So that gives you this beautiful sort of scroll design. So again, here, and you can look at what you've done on the previous stitch if you think, oh God, did I go under or over that? I'm not too sure. I can see here I'm following my thread and I went under both of them and around. So I'm going to do the same there, under both of them and around. Again, I'm going underneath the green bar and over the top of the thread that I did before. So I've got a very annoying little piece of loose thread here. I'm going to chop that off and try not to chop off everything else. Right, so I think that's it. And then yeah, I'm just going to finish these two. So under the two, once you get going with it, once you get the idea of it, it is actually a fairly quick stitch. It's just a bit tricky. As you can see at the start, it's trial and error as to whether or not you change your mind as to the direction you're going. But do the same all the way along, otherwise you're going to get a slightly odd effect. So last one, I'm going to go round here, bring that over that one, under that one, and then at the end leave yourself a nice little loop and then bring it in and put it down at the end of the row, and you should have a beautiful Sham Herringbone Hem stitch. I'll get it right. So it's a bit different from the sham hem stitch that I saw, but as you can see, the thread, you know, is loosish, so you get these nice whirly circles. And again, I'll show you my 2 examples here because they are done in a bit less of a rush. Here we go. You can see here that's it's a beautiful, beautiful stitch. And here it looks quite different in the circle actually, but it's exactly the same stitch and done exactly the same way. So I hope you enjoyed that. Have a lovely day and I shall see you all soon. Bye.